I'm going to see if I can finish a 50cm window in 7 days. It's something I've never done before, and it requires all of my focus, and above all, requires that nothing goes wrong. Let's see if I can do it. So at the beginning and end of today, I will be spending some time painting 2 oak portholes, and the rest of the day trying to finish this 50cm pivot window. So I start out by preparing the portholes for the first coats of paint. I'm going to be painting these oak portholes satin white with a water-based paint using a foam roller. This is my preferred painting combination. Water-based paint or varnish dries much more quickly than oil-based, meaning I can do multiple layers in one go and then do my sanding later on. So I clean the window using acetone to begin with, to make sure there is no grease or oil on the surface of the window. When that's dried, I get straight into the first layer. It's so warm and dry here that I only need wait a few minutes before the previous layer has tacked up enough that I can apply one more. I apply a layer of paint, but then I need to wait for it to be exactly the right dryness to move on with the next one. Too wet and the next layer won't actually apply. Too dry and the next layer risks not adhering to the previous. So I need to wait until it's tacky, which means it's started to dry and leaves a small amount of paint on your finger when you touch it. I apply 3 layers to each part of the window before I leave them to dry completely for the day. Next I'm on to my main job for the day, which is bringing this 50cm pine pivot window to its final stages. For context, when a client orders a window, I have between 4 and 5 weeks to finish it and send it. 2 weeks of this time is there to allow the glass to be made, and another week is for finishing if the client has requested that. But today I looked at how far this window has come and when it was ordered, and I realised I had only been working on it for 5 days. If I get to it then today, on day 6, I can probably get to its final stages. So I took on that challenge today. The first step is to use a belt sander to flatten the face of the window to the jamb, which has just been glued in last week. This also makes it easier to do the router work later on, as the faces are smooth for the router to be sitting on. When the faces are finally smooth, I can use a long pattern router bit to make sure the inside edge of the jamb is even the whole way around. This part of the process used to stress me out a bit. However, my confidence with the router has grown and it's actually quite fun now. The issue with this is a slight slip with the router and you can damage the main frame, which is a big fix. The key with the router on this kind of cuts, I find, is to keep your weight slightly over the side of the router. That would cause less damage if you were to slip. Next is another part which has gone seriously wrong in the past. This router bit is a beast. It has one function, and that's to create a notch to accept a high quality weather seal. The worst thing you can do with this bit is to release the depth stop of the router when you finish the cut and the bit is still in the frame. This pulls the bit up through the frame and can potentially destroy it. I've done this once. I'm very careful to move the bit out of the frame sideways now, and it kind of feels good to do that part slowly and consciously and carefully. Haven't done it since. And actually last time I did it, I managed to fix it. I had to cut a piece out of the frame, glue it back in, and it looked like the original lamination, so it was quite a nice fix. So far, I'm making good time. If I can get all of these adjustments and finishes done by the end of the day, I should easily be able to hit my 7-day target tomorrow. But there's still a few tasks left to do. Next, I send everything to 120, then to 180. Now it's time to see if the weather seals fit. This is a nerve-wracking time. All my work leads to this point, and the seal has to be in contact with the frame all the way around or it won't hold out water. I check all the way around, and this time it fits. Next up, it's the bevels. The smaller of the bevels is a fairly risk-free task. I use my little Temu router and create a small roundover around the whole frame. But this large bevel carries some risk. A few times now I've been on the home straight looking at the finish line and this bevel has knocked me right down. The risk is that the bevel breaks a piece of the frame out when cutting. So I do the hard bevel in 2 passes to put less pressure on the frame. And that brings me to lunch. After lunch I start with the bug and mold treatment. This stuff really gets into your brain, so I get on my PPE and apply 2 generous coats. For a pine window it's really important that I apply this before sending the window out. Even if the client is going to apply a finish themselves, I'll make sure this is done first, as I cannot risk any mold or termite attacks in future. To finish this window I now need to prepare all the weather seals, latches and locks, make a box and install the glass, but that won't be till next time, so I have one more day of this 7-day challenge, so it will have to be for another episode. So next we're back with the oak porthole windows that I painted the first 3 coats on this morning. If it wasn't so hot and dry I would probably wait until the next day to continue these, but the paint is fully dry so we can continue now. To continue I just need to sand the paint back to remove any surface inconsistencies. If the paint isn't fully dry it will clog up the sandpaper immediately, but that didn't happen so we're good to go. I'm using a 180 grit at this stage. Some people use 320, but I find 180 is good enough for a nice smooth finish with paint. At first I have my sander on a high setting, but this is taking off too much of the paint, so I turn it right down and it becomes much more gentle. I just smooth the paint out as I wanted to and make a key for the next 3 layers. When painting a wooden window, it's possible to make it look so perfectly smooth that the window actually ends up looking like PVC. I really don't like this, so I'm careful not to apply too much paint and not to sand too hard in between the coats. This way the grain doesn't get sanded too flat and you can still see some of it through the paint. Especially as this window is oak, it's nice for people who see the window to easily see that it is in fact wood, not PVC. So I make sure the grain is still a little bit visible through the paint. Today has been another really nice day. It's school summer holidays, which means I'm struggling to parent. I am tired, so I'm doing these simple tasks, getting them all done to a good standard, and that was really rewarding. Tomorrow I'll be working on a Sapelli casement window, working into the final stages, which are still relatively new to me, so are quite high pressure. Like and subscribe if you want to see more like this. See you next time.